video.
Hi.
COR Compost. COR Compost stands for Code of Return. And Code of Return is something that we wanted to try to embody as far as an action. Something that's very similar to how nature operates. And with nature, we have circles of life where something is grown, maybe consumes, and then it regenerates and creates more nutrients for the next living things. And so that's what we wanted to do with our business of Code of Return, show how we can resemble some of the same things that nature already does as far as balance. So to start off with, I'm going to give you girls a couple bags. So what we have in this bag is actually compost, which is basically a really, really rich amendment of soil that you would use for plants. It helps feed the plants and give it the right kind of nutrients for it to grow properly. And so what we're going to talk about today is how we turned this into soil and what we use to turn it into soil. Nature is just super exciting about all the different living things. And so I was trying to find a really cool photo to just like do a little guessing game and kind of go over some of the different things living when it comes to soil. So anyways, I wanted to show you guys this photo. And of course, this is like a very enlarged photo of a living creature. And I was trying to find the, kind of most monstery looking thing. What do you think that is, guys? And where do you think this creature might be living?
That probably may be living in compost.
Yeah, absolutely. What do you think, Red? You think it's living in the woods? Yeah, absolutely. So this is a kind of mites. And mites, yeah, they live in soil. They live in various different places. But mites are decomposers. And so they will actually take different materials, different living materials of like old plants and so on, and they'll use that as their feed source and break things down into smaller little nutrients for other growing plants. Food, air, and water. And that's what we're gonna talk about as far as some of the key elements to making a compost pile. So with these microorganisms, some of the different food that we're going to work with today actually is what we call greens and browns. So on the green side, it's usually a lot of nitrogen-based things, such as a lot of our food waste, like our vegetables, fruits, different things like that. That's going to go on your green side, or your nitrogen. And then on your browns, you have things that are typically actually brown even in nature. They're dry, like leaves, straw, wood chips. It can be coffee, tea, different dead plants, and so on. You want to start a compost pile, you want to get a designated area where you can start collecting your browns, and where you can have water nearby, and somewhere where you could keep animals and things out. A good location. And then what you start doing is you do layers of your browns and greens. So every time you lay down greens, you want to lay down browns over top. That can help out with smells. It can help keep out some of the larger animals as far as digging and so on. And just keep that moisture in there. Plus, your browns and greens are two of the essential things that these little tiny critters need to survive. So let's go ahead. We're going to get one of the buckets that has some of the food scraps.
When we start out, we want to make sure that we have a layer of browns, or just imagine it as a sponge to help collect any of the liquids that may be in there. Say if we had a watermelon, it has a bunch bunch of water still coming out of it. This will help capture any of that moisture, as well as allow air to travel up to the bottom of it and not create a plug or a seal. So you just want to kind of spread it out. You want it to be as fluffy as it can be. Imagine the pillow for all your future composting. So, grass clippings or some hay, some straw that's gone bad, either chicken litter, chicken bedding, rabbit bedding, any type of little critter bedding can usually work great for this as well.
All right. And then this is a collection of food scraps. So each time when you guys are at the cutting board, any of your little scraps or like end pieces, anything that's bad, leftovers that go bad from the fridge, stuff like that, that can all be collected. And then whenever it's time, you're gonna put it out, just toss that over. And you can see here you guys have already some carbon as well from the wood shavings, and then animal litter, which will really help with the compost process as well.
So we spread out the, we put our little layer of carbon down first, our browns, our straw, our little sponge. Then we put our food waste and food scraps down. So these don't have a whole lot of moisture in them right now. And one of the 3 things that we need for this compost to work, we have the food already, and we have the air, but we need
The water.
exactly, yeah, exactly, because we all need food, air, and water to live. So we need to add a little bit of moisture to this, and we want to keep the pile somewhere in around 40 to 50% moisture. And that may sound like some crazy idea. How do you maintain some percentage of moisture? If you can imagine, you don't have to do it, but if you were to imagine grabbing up some of your compost and squeezing it, and you wouldn't want it to drip, pour out water, but maybe form a droplet of water, and that would be a perfect amount of moisture. All right,
And then do
so
you have a pitchfork as well? Like a pitchfork or something as well?
I was using this stick here.
Yeah.
But see, that's I put about out of 2.5 gallons, a half a bucket full, a little over half of that. So probably 1.5 gallons. And you can see that it's kind of, or you may not be able to see perfectly, but it's a little,
You want to come over here, girl?
definitely got some sogginess to it. And since we're here in Georgia, we're gonna get some rain anyway. And that's a great thing. We don't have to put a whole lot of moisture on our pile because it'll constantly get wet from all the rain. But right now, we're just trying to kind of get that moist material that we put together with our sponge. So our browns and greens, our first layers, we want to make sure they're kind of mixed together some. At this point, our little sponge we set down has been mixed in with our carbon, our nitrogen, our food scraps and such. We've added enough moisture. Again, we don't want it soaking wet, but we don't want it really dry either. So that's pretty much how you want to end your piles. And it's always a good idea if you have a little bit of extra moisture, just to kind of dampen it down just a little bit. And this will help prevent it from blowing away if you get some wind. So it'll help keep it damp and down.
Keep it heavy.
There you go, perfect. Keep it heavy. I like it.
And do you girls know how the heat, how the heat even is in the pile to begin with? Have you gone over that before ever?
No.
So, because a lot of people that ask us that, that's like a big question. Like, well, how do you get your piles? Because we try to maintain our piles with having such a large volume and having this as a business. We want to have managed temperature piles of at least 135, but I would say our temperatures range from 140 to 155 consistently for at least a month. I would say 2 solid months. In reality, it's really just nature that's doing it. It's all those little microorganisms that we were talking about It's a particular type of bacteria, actually, with this stage called the thermophilic stage. And when they're eating all of those food sources and the carbon and nitrogen, it's their chemical reaction that is pushing out all that heat after they consume it. And all of that energy creates that heat. All right.
But yeah, this pile's looking pretty good. It's got a good sweet smell to it. The one thing, and it's kind of just unfortunate, but it is what it is pine needles have, again, they have a waxy cuticle over them because they are an evergreen. So it's just their physiology, really, but it takes a long time for that cuticle to break down. And your best bet is once you start composting, you'll start to see that these things start to, the needles start to get smaller and smaller, and the continuous movement and kind of crunching and moving them around will start to break them into smaller and smaller pieces that will increase their surface area to the acetamites and thermophilics and other bacteria and such that like to eat stuff in the compost pile. So it'll speed up the process, whereas these needles out here underneath the trees will be here for years to come. If you're using pine needles and you're noticing that you've had a pile before where you use straw and the straw deteriorates to nothing, don't think you're doing something wrong. It's just the material itself. If you use magnolia leaves, you're going to run into the same type of issue.
Real, okay.
Because it has that real waxy cuticle.
Okay.
Live oaks, they break down a lot faster, but they still have that real waxy cuticle.
Do you have any questions, Rebecca?
I think I do. So let's say I have like metal. How long can I decompose metal?
No. Some of the materials that, like we were talking about, we only want to use materials that are living materials as far as breaking down from the animals. So like metals, plastics, different things like that. There's a different stream for that. Like we could do, some of those materials could be recycled and reused as well, but they are just in a different way. That would not go in your compost pile. Do you have something, right?
What do you have to say? How long do compost dry? How long do compost dry?
Dry?
Like, how long did it take to make? Is that what you're trying to ask? Oh, okay.
Yeah.
How to make? Well, it can be as quick as 2 months in a commercial scale facility like we operate, where we use air to, we push air into it to make it go much quicker, because everything needs, again, water, food, and air. So the piles lose air really quickly. Whereas in nature, you can have something that composts for years. So here's a compost pile right here that nature made for us, and we didn't even have to do any work for it. It's already going on. See all that in there? So there's not a lot of moisture in there, but if there was, you'd see a lot more decomposition. But all of that is pine needles. You see them in there? And all that white stuff, it may look like mold, but that's actually mycelium. That's the actual roots, the life of a mushroom. So the mushroom is just a fruit, like an apple tree has an apple.
Yeah.
The mycelium is the tree that's under the ground that makes the mushroom. So the whole forest is a compost bin.